Market cap. Yeah.
Market cap,
Amazing.
2 trillion is
When
so
did you
big.
get involved in Bitcoin?
You know, I've not gotten involved with Bitcoin, and I wake up every day at 3 in the morning and I'm like, why am I such an idiot? What have I been waiting for, not being involved in it? And it just goes up and up.
Bitcoin fixes this.
I said my cat died.
We should start teaching him cold storage.
He's not even born yet. We're gonna have to sell the house.
Totally fine. 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin.
If you say that one more time, I'm gonna lose my...
Johnny told me he doesn't want to be with me anymore. Just stay humble and stack sats.
What?
Bitcoiners. Annoying since 2009, but still right.
What's going on, guys? K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you are having a wonderful day today. I know it's been quite a long time. In fact, really the last time we were talking about Bitcoin, it had just sort of broken out of this downwards, basically falling wedge, right? And since the breakout point, Bitcoin was up around 34%, sitting around, 28% right now. From the bottom, it's a little bit closer to around 45%, right? But there is that question of why is the price so boring? If there's so much demand, why are we not seeing higher prices immediately, right? Now, we did have a lot of global conflicts that were happening that potentially could have affected the price. There's also fears that, maybe we're seeing something like a double top. We have this top here, this top, so you got these traders like James Wynn who are looking to, massively short Bitcoin, saying we're going a lot lower. Well, I think that as history can sort of give us clues as to what might be happening, we really need to pay attention to what is going on right in front of our faces right now. And there is something that I think we should talk about. Now, you might be wondering where I've been. Truthfully, it's been a little bit boring price action for me. There hasn't been really that much to go over specifically. I've been doing a lot of traveling. If you guys were out at the conferences, I did have a chance to meet a few of you. It was really fun. We had some good times, but I thought it was time for me to do an update video today. Now, something else we can note is that the DXY has been falling. In fact, it's at its lowest level that we've seen since pretty much February of 2022, right? So from the top, you have the dollar down about 15%. Now, we know that as the DXY falls, the dollar loses its strength. This tends to be good for things like equities, crypto, for example. We're seeing the S&P attempting to break its all-time high, right? It's right there. I don't know if it broke it or not. Maybe it got rejected. I'm not really sure. I don't pay that much attention to that. But what I can say is that we are seeing some interesting things in Bitcoin, right? So if we have a look at Bitcoin right here, I just want to show you a quick chart before I get into everything. And you could see that some people are worried that, and it's so funny when you switch it to, this monthly chart. It looks so small, really, but, they're afraid that we could have some sort of a double top, something similar to what we had here, right? And, you get this M-shaped pattern, and then you basically go into the bear market. Now, there's a lot of things we can go over. We can look into all these different types of indicators. One thing you can look at just very specifically with your own eyes, you don't even need anything crazy, is you could see that after we had this run up right here, we had all these green candles, followed by a red candle that closed below that green candle, followed by multiple red candles. Same thing right here, right? We had this green candle, and then we had a red monthly candle that closed below it, and that sort of marked the double top. Now, if we have a look at what we're doing over here, in neither of these scenarios have we actually had that, right? So we had, this right here, we had this dump, but it was bought back up. And so far, this candle right here, as you guys can see, I mean, unless something insane happens by the end of the month, this candle is going to close above this candle right here, right? So that's quite different from, for example, what we saw here at the second top. The other thing also to point out is that, this move was basically at the top of this parallel channel, which we've been, I haven't been all the way back since 2017, but you could see this has been pretty solid for a long time. And we've seen that there were rejections at the heart line here. We attempted to have it as support. But the thing is this entire rally, this whole entire rally hasn't even broken out of the center of this channel yet. We haven't even come up to the top, right? Now, of course, that puts us at these crazy levels at around 330,000. Is that what we're looking for Bitcoin? Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but I do want to sort of point out why you may want to start paying a lot more attention. We've had a lot of opportunities for accumulation. It's been boring, right? A lot of people getting disinterested in crypto again, but there's something happening in the background. Now, you might be asking yourself, with all this ETF inflow and all this apparent interest of all this new money coming in, why isn't the price moving? And there's actually a pretty simple reason for that, which I'd like to get into today. But I think now might be the time to start paying attention again to crypto, right? And the funny thing is, so if we go back, if we look over here, and it's so small on this chart, but from, Bitcoin was up at around 109,000. I think a couple of exchanges, we even saw it hit up to like 112, and then it fell down about 30-ish percent, 35% to around 72. Now look at how small that is on this chart, first of all. But again, you had the people coming out saying that, Bitcoin is dead. It's not Bitcoin is dead, but, it's over, it's dying. And I thought it was really funny because a few days ago was the 7-year anniversary of Bitcoin officially being called dead on CNBC, which, by the way, by today's standards, that is 430 times roughly that Bitcoin has been called dead. So I just want to remind you guys, 7 years ago, prices around $6,000. This is what they're telling you.
Terrible price action in crypto has given us pause and forced us to ask a tough question. Should we continue to cover Bitcoin? And the answer is sadly no. So today we're having a funeral for Bitcoin. It was fun while it lasted, so many memories, so many friends. There was Tom Lee and his calls for 20,000 by year end. There was Novogratz and his calls for 40,000. And there was Ripple. I think we'll miss you most of all, Brad Garlinghouse. And then there were the characters. Bitcoin Jesus, the Oracle of Bitcoin, all 500 Ethereum co-founders, and who could forget the Coinbase screen grab and mindless trolling on Twitter, and of course our Bitcoin bug.
I just like to put things into perspective, right? Bitcoin has been the best performing asset. It's still, if you look at it compared to a lot of the other altcoins, for example, Bitcoin only down about like 5%, Ethereum from its all-time high sitting around 50%. Now, you might be thinking, well, then I should hop into Ethereum. It has a lot more room to grow. I mean, yeah, that's a possibility. But realistically, just dollar costing into Bitcoin over extensive periods of time proves to generally be the better winner. But I do want to get into all that today, guys. So if that sounds good to you, drop a comment. Haven't seen you guys in a while. Obviously, liking this video, sharing it will help. YouTube doesn't like when you don't post a lot of videos. So yeah. That being said, I do want to just mention that we do have the Blowfin competition that's going on right now, the War of Whales. They do have 17 days left for that. There also is $10,000 in bonuses. You guys know that. Those links still work, even if I'm not making videos. And also, I wanted to give a shout out again to MetaSignals. Not sure if you guys have been paying attention, but they had 45 out of 46 take profit ones, some of them even in the yes. There was only one CRV that did not hit. So that was a 45 out of 46 win rate. Again, definitely check out MetaSignals if you haven't yet, guys. They're rolling out a lot of new features. They have some trials if you're interested. And again, there's 846 NFTs. You don't have to buy the NFT, but with the ETH prices being as low as they are, this could be an opportunity to scoop that lifetime deal up, because keep in mind, you're going to get all the automated trading, all the future releases that they're having, and you get locked into that. So definitely check out MetaSignals. They have a free Discord you could check out. You can even just take the signals if you'd like. You don't even have to pay any money, if you like what you see. I think it's a great companion to your TA. If you're doing TA, I like to compare the two. Generally speaking, no, you're not always going to get wins, but it does have that competitive edge, around 70%, which, let's be honest, most traders are not getting 70% wins. I don't care what they're telling you. So definitely check out MetaSignals below. Check out Blowfin below. So let's dive in and let's talk about something going on right now. You might have been paying attention to this mystery whale that has bought another 600 Bitcoin. Now, a month ago, they bought 1,200, then 3 weeks ago, 700, and now 600. So who is this mysterious whale that seems to be purchasing all this Bitcoin? And if we're seeing massive inflows into the ETFs, we're seeing these mystery whales purchasing all this Bitcoin, why is the price not moving, and who is in fact selling? Well, the answer might be a lot simpler than you think.
Yeah, we talk a lot about who's buying Bitcoin. We do not talk as much about the sellers. So yesterday, to your point about the flows, Frank, was the 12th session in a row of positive inflows for Bitcoin ETFs. Flows are on pace for their 9th positive week in the last 11. It's almost $4 billion for the month of June. And all of that underscores the strength of institutional demand that we've been talking about all year, even amid market uncertainty. And yet, Bitcoin is only up about 3% this month. We know who's buying Bitcoin ETFs and corporate treasuries, but there's a fair amount of selling taking place as well that's almost perfectly offsetting the buying and keeping the keeping the Bitcoin price stuck, and it shows a real change in ownership in the Bitcoin market. Now, looking at data from CryptoQuant, we can see that early mega whales, think Chinese miners around 2013, 2014, they've been holding onto their coins for longer and waiting to offload them in greater amounts to today's biggest Bitcoin buyers. We're talking about 3 different cohorts of Bitcoin whales. The smallest wallets hold 1 to 1,000 coins. That's institutions via Bitcoin ETFs. They tend to fall into this category, and they've been the biggest buyers this year. But if you look at wallets holding 1,000 to 10,000 coins, and then wallets holding more than 10,000 coins, they've been selling this year. And I'll also note that retail investors, Frank, have been sellers, but that cohort is a little bit too small at this point to be moving the needle on price.
So you have to understand that when you have guys back in 2013 that are getting into Bitcoin at these levels, right? Well. I mean, for example, in 2016, or I should say the beginning of 2017, which is like when I was getting into Bitcoin, Bitcoin was around $1,000, right? So these are people that have bought Bitcoin below 1,000 or even well below 1,000. And if they held for this long, you can imagine the amount of money that they've made off of this. So it's not crazy to think that some of these whales are offloading. However, these are OG whales, and what they're doing is they are selling into these newer buyers, and these newer buyers are clearly scooping it up. Because while you could say that technically the price is not surging, you can also say that technically the price is not crashing, right? We're really only down around 4 to 5% from the all-time highs. So we're seeing a balance in this sort of distribution between the old whales that are selling and the new money that's coming in and buying. And again, that's why I've said for years on this channel that we have the opportunity to actually front run these institutions. And while that window is closing, I do believe that there still are a lot of opportunities, but there is going to be that influx. When the ETFs launched, right, we had the Sell the News event, and we said it was going to take some time because before these asset managers are going to start offering to their clients, what they need to do is see a bit of a track record. They need to see that the ETF performance has been performing in a positive manner. And we said give that about 6 to 8 months. Now, that was just the beginning, right? So it's just basically a time and numbers game, right? So now we have yet another 8 months, 10 months on top of that. And this is where they're starting to build that confidence. They're starting to get these offers. Their friends are getting involved. Their colleagues are getting involved. And now they're starting to hear that potentially sovereign wealth funds could be looking to actually get involved in Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with a sovereign that was interested in the ETF because they wanted to get ahead of the US buying it. And it was just a faster, easier button. I do think they'll end up buying both. If you look at the gold market, for instance, that's what you see. People own gold ETFs and they own gold bars. The same thing is going to be true here in crypto. So I think it's probably more likely that more sovereigns are going direct, but you'll definitely see more than one take the ETP route. It's just incredibly convenient, incredibly low cost.
In fact, one of the craziest countries of all is probably China when it comes to Bitcoin. They banned it, right? Which I also find hilarious. You had China, right? Massive country, massive population, banning Bitcoin a few years back. You might have been around for that. Bitcoin crashes 50%, right? Where is it from that point? I don't know, it's up like 10x or something, right? So Bitcoin doesn't care. Short term, yes, escalations across seas and banning and all these different things. Yeah, it affects it in the short term, but long term, people realize that Bitcoin is the ultimate store of value. It's the ultimate hedge against inflation. Again, maybe not short term, but long term, you cannot deny this. You even have $110 billion My2's Mike Kai saying that he thinks Bitcoin is going to go to over $1 million per coin, and this is his reason.
Bitcoin prices fluctuated a lot since its invention in 2009, but it recently hit a record high of 110,000 US dollars. It proves that Bitcoin is digital gold, and this is being recognized by more and more people. I believe it will chase up to gold prices in several years. The total value of gold is 22 trillion US dollars. I believe Bitcoin will reach the same level within a decade. It will grow by tenfold. The market cap of gold is 22 trillion US dollars, while Bitcoin is worth 2.2 trillion US dollars now. I think it can still grow another tenfold at 1.1 million US dollars.
And a lot of this does come down to supply and demand, because although we're seeing the price sort of stabilizing. It doesn't look like anything's happening. You know, this is really where these new players accumulate. They don't want to just send the price to the moon. They're buying into that sell pressure, right? Smart money, right? They're buying into the fear and they're selling into the greed. Or in this case, they're selling into these OG, potentially miners that have been mining it for, 15 years now, basically taking their profits. I mean, they've probably done very well, but exchange reserves are hitting all-time lows. And I mean, this doesn't look like it's trying to slow down anytime soon. And it's going to reach that point where the equilibrium is going to break and you are going to see the supply shock. Now, I think we've seen hints of it, but I don't think we've actually seen the massive potential that it has, which and again, historically, if you look at Bitcoin, what does it do? It tends to bore you, right? I mean, yeah, you got your little volatility here and there, but ultimately it's like boring. Nothing's really happening. Maybe it's going down. It seems like it's not doing anything. And then one day you open your phone, you check the price, it's up 30%. And now we're going into hockey stick mode, right? We're going into banana zone mode. And I'm telling you guys, that is the moment that you want to prepare for ultimately for Bitcoin. And it's been such a difference between the previous administration and the new administration in the US. You obviously have guys like, FOMC Powell coming out saying that banks have the right to custody on behalf of their clients. And now you have the US Federal Housing Finance Agency issuing an order to count Bitcoin and crypto as an asset for a mortgage. So now you can actually use this if you're going in to buy a house, you want to get a mortgage. Now you can even use Bitcoin or cryptocurrency as a collateral. Now, I have read it. There is a catch. So far, self-custody is not acceptable. It has to be on some sort of a reputable exchange like Coinbase or something like that, which I don't use. So, I mean, hey, we're not quite there yet, but we're moving towards a step in the right direction. And something that we might have thought we never would have seen, for example, you have Senator Blackburn announcing that she's working to include Bitcoin in 43 trillion retirement funds.
And one of the things we're trying, as we have this sliver of light, one of my goals is in our federal retirement system to offer a Bitcoin ETF as an investment option for federal employees. And here's your leader right here. She's fighting for you.
And you have to think about the evolution, right? Like, we used to write we would send telegrams or we'd write messages to each other. It would take forever, right? If, you wanted to write a letter to somebody across sea, how long would that take to get that information? And then eventually we had the telephone came out and then we switched to mail, email. And now we're just like text messaging everybody, right? So technology does advance, right? You have the horse and buggy, you have the automobile, you know where we're going with this, right? And, Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev says that, it might sound crazy now, but crypto could theoretically end up ultimately replacing traditional finance. I mean, you do have to also think about real world assets being tokenized. How much simpler would that be? To have ownership in, imagine this new project in Dubai. And the investors in the equity can actually own tokens, right? Or NFTs, for example, that could then distribute the dividends via a smart contract. These are all things that, sounded crazy years ago, but don't sound so crazy today.
I do think that crypto itself, there's two ways to look at it. One is a tradable asset like options, futures, and equities. The other is as a fundamental underlying technology.
Right.
And in the second lens, it's the next stage in evolution. We've gone from, paper and pencil, filing cabinet-based financial services to mainframe to on-premise, and then more recently, cloud. Now, crypto is the next stage in that, where a lot of the business logic that we've required businesses to actually build is now shared infrastructure. So exchanges, lending pools, payment processors, all these things are replaced by software. So I think in the future, crypto technology will power trading and all sorts of financial services, including trading in stocks and other TradFi assets. So the two will fully merge.
But ultimately, what I wanted to end on is just basically a little bit of TA. I want to show you guys exactly what it is that I've been looking at. And again, if we take this long-term trend, which by the way, guys, we do have another buy signal over here on the hash ribbon indicators. Now, keep in mind that I believe this has about, it was around an 86 to 88% hit rate. It might even be higher now, depending on what this buy signal does. But really, we've just been bouncing in this massive, massive channel. And you could say that this sort of started at around November in 2022. You know, we hit the heart line, we come back, we retest the bottom, we test the top again. We actually got a little front run on this bottom, and it does seem like, obviously, this is not a perfect chart because I'm trying to do a parallel over a logarithmic chart, which really ultimately might not be the best, thing to be trying to show this right now. But I think my point that I'm trying to make is that we still have room to go back up to the top of this channel, and that would be around 156,000. And as you guys could see right here, you might be saying, well, isn't this a lower high and a lower low? Isn't that something that we should be concerned about? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. But, you could see right here that we had said there wasn't a lot of sort of activity in this area, right? After Bitcoin broke 70,000, it basically was hovering between 91 and 104. Generally speaking, when you're building these foundations, you do come down and you refill these areas. You could think of it like filling the gap, but not really in this sense. You want to build the structure, right? So now we have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks in that area. And then we broke back above. And currently we're sitting above that area that was acting as resistance, right? So Bitcoin could potentially be putting in a bit of a bullish pattern. In fact, if you are a pattern trader and you just want to look at sort of what we could be doing right now, I mean, this to me, this to me right here, kind of looks like a bit of a bull flag. I mean, you could say it might be a descending broadening wedge or something like that, but really on a grander scale, what did we have here? This was obviously a falling channel. This would have been a massive bull flag if you were looking at it that way, but those tend to move to the upside. Here's another example. This was putting in lower highs and lower lows. People were probably like, what is going on? And look how long this went for, and then boom, absolute blast off. So this is just a smaller version. Again, you can readjust these however you want. Keep in mind, a lot of these patterns, you could bring these really wherever you want. It's kind of a little bit subjective, but at the end of the day, they really generally have, rule of thumb, I say there's about 70% chance, right? So there's always a 30% chance that we're wrong. But I mean, of course, these are just, I'm very oversimplifying these numbers, but there's a reason why there are history to these types of patterns, right? So, 70% chance says that if you have something like a descending broadening wedge, or you have something like a bull flag, there's about a 70-ish% chance we're going to break to the upside, right? So I could be wrong. We could go down. I mean, look, there is one thing concerning, and that is that we have a CME futures gap that we never closed, and that gap would basically have to come all the way down to about 91,970. It's this very, very small gap right here. As you guys see, if I zoom in, you can see right here, this gap never actually got filled. So, I mean, is there the possibility that we have that 30% chance that we are on the wrong side of the trade and it does fall down here? That is a possibility. However, I would probably say that anyone who's actually trying or actively, shorting Bitcoin heavily right now,
they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Again, could be totally wrong. But let's have some more looks at what's going on right here. So one thing that I always like to look at is these major moving averages, right? And we have a perfect set of moving averages from higher to lower. We have 200, 100, 50, 21, and they are all perfectly in that area. Now, when you start getting these crossovers, right, you have the 21 exponential falling below the 50, right? Then you start having it fall below the 100. This is when you're starting to see that downwards trend, right? But we have all upwards trends right now. Every single one of these is pointing to the upside, right? And not only that, we're holding support on the 21 exponential. If you look below here on Market Cipher, something else you'll notice is when you tend to get these waves and these little green dots, I'm not talking about the massively big ones. Those are like usually like, generational bottom buys. Nothing's perfect. But you can see right here, when you have the money flow in the green, and you get these motions, you tend to have, you get these indicators. For example, right here, right? This flashed, and what did we have? We had a 68% move. Now, obviously, this was towards the end of the market, so take that obviously with a grain of salt. Could that happen? Of course, anything could happen. But as you see over here, some of these other examples, for example, ones right here, we had this crossover, that was 168%. We had another one right here, that was a 69%. And thus far, we have had one that happened on April 14th, And that currently puts us at around a 22%. So historically speaking, even if you thought this was the top, you would still think there'd be about another 40% move potentially for Bitcoin. Another thing I like to look at is just the stochastic, the RSI, MACDs, and all that. And, yeah, you could say that maybe we're coming down here a little bit, but, look at where you tend to get a lot of these, major sideways or downwards trends. And you usually have the RSI a lot higher than where it is currently right now. We're somewhere in the middle, right? And we just moved out of that area. So yes, you are having a little bit of a, de-expansion, I guess you could say, but keep in mind, these things can stay overbought and oversold a lot longer than you think. It's not this instant sort of where you get, it's oversold and then immediately the markets are going to sell. No, they can stay like that for a very, very, very long time. Here's the same bits of data with the lines in there, but I removed the bottom, and you could see that, it's possible that maybe we're only, in the end, maybe we only have a few months into the end of the year, but it does look like there is a lot of momentum. And once you get this green, you tend to stay there for quite a long time. Now, this was the COVID crash, and this green lasted for about 630 days. And if we take from where we are right now, we've been in here for about 574 days, right? But the other thing too is you have to think about diminishing cycles, but you also have to think about lengthening cycles as well. If you're having a lot of volatility, that could possibly speed up the actual cycles themselves. Whereas if you have diminishing returns as well as diminishing volatility, then the guy just came here, he started cleaning my pool, and I'm looking at him through the window, and it's like kind of weird recording a video in front of my pool guy. But anyway, so yeah, the other thing I wanted to talk about was, we still haven't broke above this Fibonacci extension. Really, all we've been doing is consolidating. And every time we come down, we're using these ranges, right? We came down to the 0 point, we bounced. We then had 0.283, that was around the 82,000. And once we broke above that, we got into the center band. And currently, the 0.786, which has been around the 102, give or take, on the weekly, has been holding support. Now, you could see 109,000, that has been the resistance ever since back here in December of 2024. And if we just zoom in, there is really nothing in this area. This is uncharted territory, right? So maybe what a lot of these whales know, a lot of these newer players know, that if this accumulation zone, gets broken, the next area is the 1.618, and we're probably looking at $130,000 Bitcoin. So, this doesn't have to break out tomorrow. Could this, drop a little lower? Could we retest the 96? Could we close the CME futures gap? Yes, but I would not bet against this because, as you can see, this trend is your friend, and we have not broken that trend yet. So I just wanted to kind of make a video update for you guys. In a nutshell, I do remain bullish. We could see a retest of the bottom of that flag. It doesn't mean that the bull flag or the descending wedge is over, right? We could fill the CME gap at 92,000, but I wouldn't be putting on massive, massive shorts hoping for insanely low levels right now. I think the trend is your friend. I know the trend is your friend. And for me, Bitcoin remains bullish in this area. And I just wanted to end on this clip from Secretary Scott Bennett talking about how Bitcoin is freedom. Now, this video actually glitches, but just listen to the audio, and I think you'll get the point.
I've been excited about the president's embrace of crypto, and I think it fits very well with the Republican Party, the ethos of crypto's about freedom, and the crypto economy is here to stay. The Democrats are running from it because they're trying to wash off the stench of Sam Bankman-Fried and his family's donations to the Democratic Party. So they're willing to take down a whole industry because of bad behavior on their part, bad behavior on one actor. And I think that everything's on the table with Bitcoin. And to me, one of the most exciting things about Bitcoin is for a generation of investors who maybe post the great financial crisis have been looking for investment opportunities, or maybe they'd soured on markets. Crypto is bringing in young people. It's bringing in the people who haven't participated in markets, and having a market culture in the U.S. and people believing that markets work for them is a centerpiece of capitalism.
See, I don't know why that video froze. Something happened, but you get the point. The audio, I think, stands for itself. It's definitely a different time that we're living in. We are getting at the point where Bitcoin is becoming potentially difficult for the average person to get one Bitcoin. I mean, $100,000 is a lot for the average person, right? But again, I don't think that's the way to look at it. You know, I've spoke to people and I've heard the same thing. You know, I heard Bitcoin was too expensive at 10,000. It was too expensive at 20,000, right? Well, then it was too expensive at 30 and 50 and 60 and now 100. Now, I'm not going to lie, $100,000 is a lot of money for the average person, okay? So maybe it is starting to actually get a little expensive for the average person, but you have to think about the symmetrical returns, right? If you think Bitcoin's going to $1 million, well, then that's a 10x from this point, you know? And I mean, I understand you're talking about these life-changing, you know, money. Maybe we go into some of these altcoins, but that's fine. You know, I'm not against it. But again, if you just look at, just literally open up CoinGecko, open up whatever you guys use, Cointelegraph, or not Cointelegraph, CoinMarketCap. I haven't used that one in a while. And just scroll down and look at the all times. You know, again, you know, maybe the days of like, you know, the 20, 30, 40 X's, could they be over? Possibly. But again, with all of the M2 money printing, we know that the rates are going to get lowered. The sky really is the limit. And, you know, every time you mention a number, it seems impossible, right? $20,000 Bitcoin seemed impossible at 1,000. $100,000 Bitcoin seemed impossible at 20. $1 million Bitcoin seems impossible at 100. And I bet you a $10 million Bitcoin is going to seem impossible at 1 million, right? It's very difficult to comprehend these numbers, but when you understand the global M2 money supply, the constant devaluation of currency, the absolute waste of putting your money into savings, I mean, you could try real estate if you want. You know, a lot of houses are actually down at the moment. So really for me, Bitcoin is the most liquid. Not financial advice, do what you guys want. But that's where I'm gonna end this video today. Also, if you wanna check out LevX, guys, you can, there's lots of bonuses below. I do have my personal, I haven't updated as much as I'd like, but if you guys want more like inside stuff, you know, I do occasionally post over there. And Femex also is having their trading competition. Femex still to this day has no KYC. I you know, highly recommend them. Obviously, not financial advice, do what you want, but they do have $30,000 bonus if you click the link below in the description. Check out Meta Signals, all that stuff. You know, all shilling aside, you guys don't have to click any of the links. You don't have to use any products. These are just products that I use, I believe in. Meta Signals, for example, is something that I actually actively do invest in because I really like the product. You know, they've been back testing it for 6 years. It works very, very well. If you want to get that competitive edge, check out Meta Signals below. Check out Blowfin or non-KYC Femex. You know, and you know, if you guys don't want to leverage, that's fine. You know, just dollar cost average, or you know, use some of these strategies with, you know, lower, safer plays. Totally up to you guys. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to ultimately make this video to let you guys know that I still remain quite bullish on Bitcoin, even though I have not made an update video in a long time. My stance does not change. So again, if you guys enjoy these videos, if you want me to make more videos, let me know. You know, like, see, this is my pool guy right now. All right, unbelievable. All right, guys, I gotta get going. So he's got to talk to me about the pool. So I'll talk to you later, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Yeah, check out these tutorials if you want right here, right now. Until next time, stay crypto. And of course, peace out.